Okay. So, what is the second year like? So, assuming that everybody now knows the entire anatomy of the soul, right? And you should review it. You should have a chance to review it at some time. And hopefully you can all go on the new Moodle site, which is entirely in English. And you can review the courses you've taken already anytime you like. So that's given to anybody. Whenever you've already enrolled in 1 year of the program, you get the whole year afterwards online to review as many times as you like. I'll try to transfer it with the same passwords. Okay. As soon as today we know who's here, so then we'll fix it, and then you'll have access to, if you've taken the first year, and the second year. That you should know, the Moodle site contains every lecture when we finish, pretty much the same day. Sometimes it takes a day or two. And it's uploaded to the Moodle site, and you can review it and you get the sources again, or whatever. And to access it, when we have all of your emails, I'll send everybody out an email to review how to get on the site and how to use it. Okay. In terms of the foundation, so Anatomy of the Soul, and I hope that you all purchased the book also, and then you have it handy and think about it once in a while, maybe. The other main thing that we do is this book called Dev Dat, and this has not been translated into English yet, so that's why we do it as a course, the way that we do it. And I hand out, what you have here is chapter 8 of the second article. Second article is basically what we're going to learn this with me the second year. It's called Faith and Confidence. And as a word of introduction, we need a little bit of introduction, especially for somebody who hasn't been here in the first year, or only heard part of the first year. The first year we learned the first article here, which is called Perek B'Avodat Hashem, or Rectifying the Ego, the way that we translate it into English. And to state it hopefully in less than a minute or so, what we learned last year is what the Baal Shem Tov would call submission. Is that first of all, in order to begin to solve our psychological problems and to better our psychological condition, we have to face up to who we really are. And to do that, we have to get rid of the self-image that we've created over the years. And the self-image is a byproduct of the ego. Self-image tells me either I'm very good or I'm very bad. It doesn't really matter what it tells me, but it is entirely self-centered. And sometimes under the guise of being very self-righteous, it tells me I'm a very negative person, nobody likes me, and so on. It's all the same thing. It's true that somebody who feels that they're great and wonderful and so on, they seem to be happier. But like we said last year, it's in the end you go bankrupt, because your ego cannot sustain the psyche. The ego is a limited resource. What you do to receive energy from your ego is you aggrandize it more and more in either direction. You give it more strength, as it were. But since it's limited, in the end it goes bankrupt. It can't keep you going. And so the psyche is very complex, so some people will go bankrupt in some areas and not in other areas. It can be very complex, this whole thing, how it works, and then you end up with all your psychological problems. Or as the Baal Shem Tov said, that most people who went crazy did so because they couldn't attain what their ego wanted. The source of most psychological malady, I mean, his words for going crazy, what he means is most of the psychological pathologies that people suffer from are caused by the ego trying to attain something that it can't. Meaning it has a false image of itself. The person has a false image of himself. And what we saw is that the rectification for that is not to obliterate the ego, but rather that the ego should be a constant reminder of who I really am. That really, and that's what we call lowliness. Lowliness is the self-recognition that I'm really very little, if anything at all. And I'm mostly guided by self-interest. And we saw how all these things could be rectified and used to our favor. But the bottom line is that at the end of the first year, you come out with a sense, and this people raised this during the first year, is that where do I get the motivation to actually do anything? Because it seems like by lowering myself so much, I've lost the motivation that the ego seems to afford me. And the ego seems to really encourage a person to go and get something, right? To go and achieve. And so it seems that a person who's really a tzaddik, or if you want to call it a tzaddik, or somebody like King David was our symbol of somebody who's lowly, shouldn't be able to actually do anything in the world. Because they're constantly, you could say, anchored or even pulled down by their sense of lowliness. We said that the antidote to that is bittul, is selflessness, is to understand that God put me in the world with a purpose, and that I have to attain that purpose. But we sort of left it at that. And we said that those two have to work together, the lowliness and the selflessness. And when they work together in conjunction and there's a balance between them, the person is healthy. But I think you still were left with a feeling that overall rectifying the ego leaves you with a state of, I don't want to call it apathy, but a state that is not motivated. That it's difficult to rise above and to expect something, to expect to be able to attain anything, to expect to be able to do anything in this life. Right? That's the overall, I think, the overall sense that you come out of from rectifying the ego. And that's okay, because we said that's submission. And we start every process of rectification in the psyche with submission. The next stage that you've already learned in Miriam Rhodes' class is separation. And how would we define separation? So basically what we're going to be dealing with in faith and confidence is a stage of separation. And how do we define separation? So the clearest definition that I've been able to come up with over the years is that separation means to identify with God. Or if you want in more psychological language, to identify with what we would call your higher self. If rectifying the ego is dealing with the lower part of who I am, which is my animal soul, and rectifying that also with my divine soul, also with my higher self, but certainly the focus was on the animal soul. And now, in separation, the focus shifts to the divine soul, to what it means to be divine in the world. And you know what the word divine with a lowercase d means? To divine something up. What does that mean? It means to make it happen. It's to cause something, to make something, to divine, like to conjure. And with a D. It's the same word in Hebrew. We usually translate Eloki from Elokim as divine. But we do it with a capital D, even though a lot of people don't like it. But we mean like Elokim. What does Elokim mean? Nefesh Elokit. Eloka means power. Okay, that's what it means. Yesh le'el yadchem le'ara oti, says Lavan. You have the power, says Yaakov to Lavan. You have the power to hurt me. Yesh la'el yadchem. The power in your hands. El means a power. So when we say divine soul, one of the ways to think about what the divine soul really is that it is the driving force behind all action that I can do in this world. Meaning, until now, before I learned rectifying the ego, everything that I did was pretty much a byproduct of my self-interest and my self-aggrandizement. Now that hopefully I've gotten rid of that, and we'll talk about that in a moment, what that means. What does it mean we've rectified the ego? How exactly have we finished? But now that we've taken care of that, we move to identify with the divine soul. And in the divine soul is the source of all the good that a person does during his life. Meaning we've had to separate them out, separate out the evil or the negative, the animal soul's motivation in order to begin to do things from the right place. And when you begin to do things from the right place, there's many, many things that are different. Let me just say one of these things that's different, and then we'll remind me to get back to what it means that we finish with rectifying the ego, because maybe we've taken a year-long course, but I don't think that anybody is, fooling themselves that they're done with the ego. Obviously, this is going to take longer, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But let me just give us one example. Probably the most difficult thing for a person to do in their lives is to give up what they've attained. Now, everybody does that at some point, because everybody passes away at some point. It's an exercise. Death is an exercise in who does this all belong to. That's what it is. It's like a person, you can't take anything with you. You have to give up, and it becomes even, imagine, like a very difficult situation. Let's say, God forbid, a mother who is 40 years old and has 8 children, 9 children, 10 children, 3 children, whatever it is, and they're still young. And she knows she is about to pass away. So a person can say, how cruel is that? Like, what kind of a world is Hashem created? But that's what life is all about. And it depends where you do things from. That if you're able to do them from the place that this is all from the divine soul, nothing's lost. Because in the East they would say, because you never had anything. We would say, because this is all Hashem. Nothing's lost, because it was never in my power to begin with, but it's certainly what I did. And if I'm one with Hashem, with the divine soul, so then the person understands that this exercise means that really nothing is lost. If I'm still here even. Nothing's changed. It's just that moment of having to let go is the moment of the ego, of the animal soul, having to admit that it doesn't belong to it the way that things belong to the animal soul, the way that it likes to possess things. But when it comes to the divine soul, the possession is absolute in the sense that it never ends. There's nothing changed at all at the moment of death, as it were.
So what is a short
Okay.
possession?
The animal soul possesses things in the sense of it's mine and not yours. Meaning the credit goes to me and not to you, Hashem. The divine soul possesses things in the sense that I and Hashem are one thing. And the possession is absolute, the way that all of Hashem's possessions are absolute. It's not mine in the sense of the credit goes to me. It's mine in the sense that I'm part of God above. And therefore it exists forever. There's no lack ever. There's no sense of loss ever. And that's what the divine soul can attain that the animal soul can't understand. That's just one example. We'll talk about many more examples. Yeah.
Why do we mourn and why do we do all these things?
We mourn.
Yeah, but like there's halacha, like you were saying.
Okay, we mourn.
Yeah.
We mourn, but not the... Because for us as
Hashem wants us to b'chol zot.
Because we feel that we don't have a connection anymore. Because we can't bridge the gap.
So it's for our benefit that Hashem did all these halachot so that we can sort of heal from that.
And what do these halachot really say in the end? They say in the end that, like if you're a Sfaradi, min hashamayim tenuchamu, that the nechama really comes from Hashem. What's the nechama? What Hashem came down and told me everything's okay. It's not what he said. What he says is, this is all me. Don't worry, nothing's gone. Nothing's really changed. You can't see it. You can't see how this continues to work. But let me give the opposite example. What happens if a person doesn't know how to let go? If the animal soul continues to fight during that last moment. So there's a description in the sages. I didn't think we would get into this. What?
Which they should for life.
For the life maybe, but not to hold on to everything they possess.
For every second
For the life itself, but as a chance to serve Hashem, but not to gain another possession. I'm not holding on to life so I can sign the last contract.
Is like being with the loved ones around you?
It's not possession. It's a last chance we get to see each other.
Not for their house. I mean, they're sitting in the hospital.
So it could be something negative. It could be that they're holding on to, I don't know, to do one last thing, whatever it is, like to gain one last thing. But if the soul fights, if the psyche, it's not the soul, if the psyche continues to fight and feel that they have to possess everything, the sages describe that the person goes into a state called kafakela. This is from David. David says this. He says that there's a state called kafakela. There's liot tzarur bitzror hachaim, to become one with Hashem, and then there's this state called kafakela, which is like being thrown from one side to another. How is it described? It's explained that the person continues to live his life as if it never ended. They go to work in the morning. They go to work.
Yeah.
They do what they did.
That's where the idea of ghosts come from.
That's already our imagination. But for the neshama, it's like a state, and again, the neshama itself goes to Hashem, but the psyche can remain in a state of not being able to let go of what it had. It's so strong, this feeling of the ego to hold on to what I have. Now, I took the extreme case, but you can always see this in life, that something is over, and the person continues to hold on to it. They can't let go.
אז כן ככה, גם עם ילדים, משפחה.
כן,
תראה את אברהם אבינו.
exactly. כן. Yeah, in what she's saying is like by Avram, Sarah told him, get rid of this child that you have. And God told him to listen to her. And what did he do? So after he got rid of him, he brought him back. He couldn't let go of it. Now you could say that in Avram, since it's Avram, so there's other sides to it also. That even he had some kind of approbation from Hashem to continue to educate Ishmael. But on the face of it, the simple face of it, it's very strange. Why would he continue to hold on to it? So that's maybe an example, a rectified example. We have to think about it. But in regular life, you see that people, something's over, relationships. Okay? The relationship is over, and the person can't let go. What can't let go? So that's the question. If it's the animal soul, the not being able to let go is a negative thing. If it's from the divine soul, and that's always the question. Like somebody, if there's a person who's not married yet and comes and says, I was going with somebody and now it's over, but I feel that something's wrong. So you have to figure out what's wrong. Is it the regular state of the animal soul not being able to free its possessions because it feels that it possesses something? Or is it really something deeper, that there's really a connection? And the divine soul is saying, yes, but this is where I was supposed to work in life. This is where I was supposed to build a home.
So how would you know?
So that's exactly that's exactly what we're supposed to help with, to figure that out.
If the soul passes on, the divine part of you could hold on to a divine part of the relationship.
Right, and that never ends.
So you never let that go.
No, it's not letting go. It's simply because it's eternal. There's an eternal element to the connection.
There may be a peace to it. There may be a sadness to it, or a pull, or a pain to it. It's not.
No,
It should feel
sadness is not the right word. I think the word is gaguim. I don't know how to say that in English. But longing. Longing. It's not sadness, it's longing, because we long to be together again. Okay?
We long to be together again as humans.
Okay, exactly.
Not as just soul. Soul's embodied.
No, obviously, the divine soul without the body.
There's a whole physical aspect to this picture too.
It's physical because that's how the people who are left behind see it. That we're on two different planes, right? There's the soul on the spiritual plane, and there's a body on the physical plane, and they don't mix. So that's where the longing comes from.
So God understands we're going to always have that physical counterpart in the picture. We're not going to just live from the divine part of us.
Okay.
And He's okay with that.
The divine, maybe because you're equating physical with animal soul. They're not the same thing.
Okay.
The physical is neutral, in the sense that it's based on the animal soul, but it can just as much be based on the divine soul. Meaning, what gives me life as a physical being is not just my animal soul, which is the natural state of things. I can elevate to a state where the divine soul is what gives life to the physical matter.
It's like a long for someone who's gone from a divine place.
Right.
Even though I physically
Right,
can't
right,
see them
right.
again.
Exactly. So there's a lot to be said about it. An example that I thought would be short and would give like the shock treatment, but it becomes longer the more we think about it. So we'll stop with this example as if it's about this. So if it's not, then it's okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Could you just give some simple definitions? Ego, psyche, soul, you're talking about.
Okay, ego is the feeling of myself. Okay, the self-image is what's created by the ego. That I begin to picture myself in a certain way. I have a certain conception of who I am. The psyche is basically you could say the playground or the field in which all this occurs. The battle, we could say the ongoing struggle between the divine soul and the animal soul. Okay, the psyche is where this is all happening. The psyche is like my mind.
Cities in the Tanya, like
Good.
cities.
Okay. Good. Yeah. So where are those two cities? The field that they're on, that's the psyche. That's where it's all happening. Okay. So let me go back to that statement that I said before. We finished the first
see
year.
if it's not relevant. Can someone save themselves, let's say, if they do the work here? I mean, probably not like
Can. That's the entire idea.
Be doing this and then somehow
That's the entire idea. That's the entire idea. That the more the person is working and doing through his divine soul, not through his animal soul, he doesn't need that. There's no need to be tossed from side to side. That's the difference between acting from the animal soul and acting from the divine soul. That the divine soul, as we'll see, is selfless to begin with. It's the act of selflessness. How can they be? We said selflessness is moving from above to below. It's a motion of shuv, of going into the world. Okay. Yeah.
If we keep saying ourselves that we are lonely because we identify with our animal soul, they probably call ourselves lonely. Then
Right.
how suddenly at some point are we supposed to just let it go?
We don't let go.
No,
It's not so easy. We don't just let go. You can't just let go of the animal soul, because we learned that all our intellectual soul, everything that in our intellect is to begin with, is based on how the animal soul sees the world. So it's a
woman who's
Sorry?
not losing anything. She's about to die, and but she's not losing anything really. She thinks of another way. But how? If we don't think that other way.
That's why we're here, to think the other way. That's exactly what we do when we learn Torah, or when we try to act out of a different motivation.
While we're here for a year, you tell us that we are our animal soul.
And now we took a break, and now we're saying from now on we're going to identify with our divine soul.
So we're going to change them?
Yeah.
You changed already, because you already changed. So that leads up to that question that we just said. What does it mean that after a year of learning about rectifying the ego, so now everything is okay? Obviously it's not. Obviously it's not. But the other thing about separation is that separation works through, and I always forget the word in English and in Hebrew, hadchaka. Hadchaka, we said, is what Freud didn't like. Denial. We deny. We're very good at it. Denial, repress it, right. We repress,
You're using it the same way.
yeah, right. We repress, for separation to work, you have to be able to repress. Now, in regular psychology, they don't like repression, because they say it comes back to bite your head off. But that's only true if there's nothing real about where else you're holding on to. Repression in regular psychology means that I still identify with the thing that I'm repressing. And that's why it doesn't work. Because if that's who I really am, so I'm repressing myself, that can't work. But if, and this is the big chiddush of Torah, I have two selves, not one. And they're infinitely different from one another. The greater the distance between them, the greater the separation between them, the more I can identify one and repress the other.
But what about a Jew's response to this?
Well, hold on to it. Hold on means hold on to that. Separation, according to the Baal Shem Tov, requires repression and denial. Meaning that if thoughts come up, but maybe when I'm doing this now, I'm motivated by my animal soul, not from my divine soul, repress that thought. It's not shaykh right now. It could be that it's true, but repression means I don't care right now. Because I'm trying to identify with my divine soul. The example that I usually give when I teach submission, separation, sweetening about this whole process is how to change one's dietary habits, how to eat healthy. So when you decide to eat healthy, it's not enough to stop eating not healthy. That's just submission. You have to build a new identity. That's separation. The new identity is that I'm a healthy person. Now, what happens that I, as a healthy person, suddenly go into the kitchen at 2 o'clock in the night and eat some chocolate? Not good chocolate with all the terrible things. Not 99% cocoa. What do I do about that? I repress it. I said, forget it. I'm prone to fall. I know I'm prone to fall because I'm trying now to build a different identity, which means that in the morning when I wake up, I'm going to squeeze again the orange juice or whatever or whatever people do today, the shakes with the wheatgrass juice and whatever else you do, and that's me. And what happened at night? I repress it because I know. What do you mean I repress it? I know that I'm prone to every negative thing in the world. That's what I learned in rectifying the ego. I don't have to deal with that now. I know that already. You're not telling me anything new. But it's to remind me that I still identify with my animal soul. When I do something wrong, it's just to remind me that I still identify with my animal soul. And if thoughts, doubts creep in, why am I doing this now? Is it because of my divine soul or my animal soul? So I have to repress that thought and say, now I'm working with my divine soul. The sign will come at the end, whether it's really the divine soul or not. Somebody remembers, we already said it last year. We said that if a person could take satisfaction in the act itself, that was acting with the divine soul. If the person needs acknowledgement or some kind of pat on the back or some feeling of feedback from the act that they did, that's a sure sign that it came from the animal soul and not from the divine soul. The divine soul doesn't need credit. It doesn't need satisfaction that comes externally. In fact, it doesn't even need satisfaction at all. But if there's satisfaction, it comes from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside. It's the satisfaction of doing, of being God's emissary. That's acting through the divine soul. Okay, so now back to Karen. What about Jew's responsibility?
So it's two parts. One is the Jew's responsibility to work to elevate, to find the tiferet between the physical and the spiritual. That we don't just separate. We don't just say we're just living on a hill, not.
That's sweetening. That's the third stage.
Right. So I'm saying
that's the third stage. Before we get to that, we have to learn how to identify, realign our identity with the divine soul, with our higher self. Okay, so that was one part. What's the second part?
No, that was the second part. Okay. That really the third stage is.
The third stage is sweetening. It's going back to pick up whatever I left behind. Yeah. That the animal soul is also a part of everything that I'm doing. But at this stage, I have to repress it. In the sense, not that I repress it, I say it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. But I ignore all its problems. I've learned about it. I know what it means. I know what you get out of it. You get loneliness out of every problem that you, every failure that you have, all the entitlement that you feel. I know all this. But now I'm trying to build my identity and my identification with my higher self. And that's why it works, because I do have a higher self. There is a higher divine soul in me. So I can afford to realign who I am with that and leave the animal soul behind. And that type of suppression, I think it's even called suppression or repression, works. It won't come back to bite me. It's always there. It always shows up again. But not in the sense of I'm lying to myself. Because I'm not lying to myself. I would be lying to myself if I had no divine soul. But since every Jew has two souls, a divine soul and an animal soul, so I'm not lying to myself. It's just that I'm weak. My divine soul, I got to get the dust off of it. Got to get it working again. Or discover what it is, or start feeding it. Okay.
Repressing then the thought, whatever the thought is, the negative thing we want to associate with, does one also then not focus on the loneliness that goes with it?
Yes, exactly. If it gives loneliness, I'm not interested. In practice, you move through these states all day long anyway. It's not like, it's very hard to completely, go through a whole week and not feel any of the failures and whatever of the animal soul. It's always there.
Forever. You don't wallow in the loneliness.
Right, like even in the Rebbe, let's say something very, very important. The Lubavitcher Rebbe changed the whole way that Chabad worked until this generation, and how he changed it was that he said no more lowliness at all, only joy. Now we'll see that when we start learning faith and confidence, we'll see this is the image of who he is, that he's entirely separation. He's entirely identifying with the divine soul to the point where he completely suppresses 100% that there's anything negative about a Jew, about myself, about another person. Forget it, just forget it. He's like, just ignore it. Now, he didn't make it up. There was always this type of teaching. Where was this teaching learned? No, actually from the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek, so there was a young man who came to him and said, "What happens if I want to make up for the sins that have to do with improper sexual conduct, the personal, the individual?" So the Zohar says there's no rectification for that. So the Tzemach Tzedek told him, forget about that. The only thing you can do is to be happy, is to have joy in Hashem. Being happy in Hashem means identifying with Hashem. That's what it means. He said, forget about all the different, in the Shulchan Aruch, there's still all kinds of things you can do this. The Zohar says there's nothing you can do. It's a blemish that cannot be rectified. So he says, yes, it cannot be rectified through the usual course of lowliness and doing tshuva in the regular way. The only way to rectify it is to reconnect with Hashem in joy. That's all. And that itself is much higher than everything that we did in previous generations. That's how he explained it. But that was only in an extreme case where the Zohar says there's no tshuva. But what about regular life? So the Rabbi said in regular life, the same thing. Everything is an extreme case today. Good. That's how you have to grasp yourself. That's how you have to see yourself. So we're saying that for him it was very clear that that's how he was. But when we learn it, so we have to know the whole process, and to understand that in the end, the amount of time you dedicate to separation. One of the teachers here once said that submission, separation, sweetening is like a 3-layer cake. That most of the time you do submission, right? That's the first layer. And then the second layer is separation, and then sweetening. But I, in my strange understanding, think it's a 3-layer cake that works the opposite. The least amount of time is submission. The most amount of time is separation. And a little bit of the time is sweetening. But the least amount of time in the end is submission. Because that's how the Rabbi taught it. That in the end you spend most of your life in separation, trying to identify with something higher, not falling into the self-image created by the ego. Not falling into the self-image of the animal soul. That's the real struggle. To see myself not as this person who's full of self-interest. Again, if I'm full of self-interest, and that's all that's motivating me, so I am lying to myself because I identify completely with my animal soul. But to spend most of my time trying to identify with the higher ideals of the divine soul. How is this different than what people say you should be a mensch? To be a mensch is to hope that you can change the intellectual soul from identifying with the animal soul to identifying with the divine soul. It's not yet really identifying with the divine soul. It just means that my understanding, I understand you should act differently, but it doesn't mean that I really identify with it yet. To really identify with it is to act, is to create reality out of my divine soul. It's much more than just identification. The identification is just the first part.
one change one?
You have, that's what, to carry the, forgot to press this, to carry the analogy of the, I think I did press it, I think it doesn't work. So to carry the analogy of the changing one's dietary habits, it's not enough, it's just full. It's not enough for me to identify with a lot of health food magazines. I have to actually prepare food that's healthy. I have to actually make it. I can't buy it in a store. Buying it in a store is the short path to going back to eating nonsense, negative things, because in the end, when you go to stores, there's a lot more offered in the way of bad food than good food. So if I'm used to relying on what there is in the store, I will sink back to where I was. I have to learn how to become self-sufficient. Self-sufficient in the sense that it comes from me, not from something on the outside. That's why I can't. In the psyche, let's translate it into the psyche, is you have to find the source that's infinite. You can't keep relying, that's why we said, in the end the animal soul goes bankrupt, because the ego goes bankrupt in the end. You have to find the source called the divine soul, which is infinite. It's like God. It doesn't have a finite amount of energy it can give you. It can give you as much as you want, whenever you want. But you have to find that source. That's the difference between relying on the supermarket and preparing food at home. Because to prepare food at home, I have to tap into some source of energy. To buy food in the supermarket, I don't have to tap into anything. That's how the ego works, if you want that as an analogy. The ego is quick satisfaction coming from the outside. Sweets, salt, and oil. There's a famous story, I think I said this maybe not in the summer, but last year, that when the Baal Shem Tov, is a tradition from him that, they used to have pieces of sugar instead of, they didn't have it ground up. So when he drank his tea, so he would hold the sugar in his hand. He wouldn't put it into the tea. There was no need to.
That's the Baal Shem Tov.
It's the Baal Shem Tov. And he tasted the sugar. That's exactly the point.
What was he doing?
Through holding it. I mean, it's not. I don't have to swallow it to feel it. Meaning, if I need to put it in my tea to taste it, it means that sweetness is external. Whereas if I can, this is like just to give me like and like. It's a little bit like homeopathy. It's the way that Hashem works. It says Hashem's healing is b'mashu makehu merapeh. That the thing with which He afflicts, He also heals. It's the same thing. So if I hold it, it's just to remind my body what does it mean to create sweetness on the inside. In the same way that if you're working with the animal soul, so the only thing that can give you satisfaction is, again, something coming from the outside. If somebody pats you on the back, gives you recognition, tells you how nice you are, and so on. If I'm working with the divine soul, which is it's an infinite source of energy, of everything, so it comes from the inside. I don't need it. I don't need to take it in. It's already there. I just need to awaken it. I need to give it an example of what it looks like. Okay.
If we take what the Tanya says, it could be that at some point a person keeps on fighting all his life. So it's very easy to say I will identify with my divine soul, but it feels more that it's like a constant.
It's a struggle.
It's a constant work, and it's like fitness. Like I have to work on this all the time, and it could be that all my life I will be acting from a more intellectual place because I still yearn for ABC, but I'm still acting.
What the Tanya says that can continue a person's whole life. He's talking about the garments. He's not talking about what I identify with. He says my garments, this flesh and blood, is not holy enough for it to change completely.
But where's the struggle coming from?
Because I need to rectify this. I need to rectify my garments. Garments is not just the body. It's the thought, speech, and action. But that's not my emotions. That's not my understanding. Thought is not the same as understanding.
So it could be
they're external. Can. On the inside, the person changes completely. And yet still the garments are not transparent.
That struggle is
That struggle is
awareness.
in the same way that you have to do dishes every day. There's no difference. It's the same thing. Why do you have to clean the house every day? Why do you have to do dishes? Why do you have to go to the bathroom? Why do you need all these things? Because the world is in a state that everything is lower than what it could be. And when it's lower, it needs to be cleaned every day again. It's just the way that the world is right now. But that's external. The inner sense is one of that there's real identification with something higher. And again, why did God give me these garments that are so low? Because He wants me to also have lowliness. He doesn't, again, that's my animal soul. My animal soul is almost equivalent to my garments. It's almost the same thing. Garments of the soul means the thought, speech, and action that the person has. They're garments of the soul because they give us a chance to express the soul. But they're not the soul itself. They're not the psyche itself. Okay? That you shouldn't be at all tuskal because of, how do you say tuskal? Shouldn't be.
We're in a world, in a very physical world, almost like the magnetic fields of our animal soul clinging to everything with this world.
Until you discover that the divine soul also has like you're saying, an electromagnetic force, and it's stronger. It's infinite. It's not like you could say in a certain sense. Too much physics. Forget it. We'll, some other some other time. But there's a book that we put out from Rav Ginsburg's lectures on modern physics. That there's a whole description there of the difference between the electromagnetic force and the strong and weak force of the nucleus. So it's a way of understanding lectures in modern physics. I think Torah in modern physics or something. Yeah, I think that they might have it here. Okay. Anyway, so why is this called faith and confidence? Because basically what we're going to try to build is another dynamic, which is called faith and confidence. The way that in the first way we had selflessness and lowliness, bitul and shiflut. Here the dynamic is between faith and confidence, between Emunah and Bitachon.
Is there another?
Yes, there's more of these here. There should be. You can take a set of these. There's 4 of them. They're in sets.
Just tell me fast why he had to sit with that sugar. Why he had to have.
That's what we said. That it awakens. It's an example. It's like you need an example of that thing to awaken it inside. In the same way that I need Torah to awaken what's anyway inside. But I need the book. I need to see it. Why does Hashem give it to me as a book? Why? It's in me. Why do I need it? Because that's what awakens it. That seeing it on the inside and the outside, experiencing it on the outside awakens the same thing on the inside. Same with that, I need a tzaddik to awaken what I have, the tzaddik in me. When you see a real tzaddik, it's awakened inside. You suddenly feel it. Okay. Okay, so we've got the pages now. Why is this called faith and confidence? Because we're basically going to be talking about a dynamic that is a foundation for all action from the divine soul. The divine soul acts between emunah and bitachon, between faith and confidence. They're opposites. They're so opposite, faith and confidence, that faith can be likened to nothingness and confidence to somethingness, or Einen and Yesh, the way that it's called in Torah.
So some faith is what? Nothingness?
Faith is the experience of nothingness,
What you said?
or selflessness. And confidence, or trust, bitachon, is an experience of being. If everything that we talked about last year was related in one way or another to the experience of nothingness, everything we're going to talk about this year is about being. It's about becoming something in the world. But again, we left it to this year because we want it to happen from the divine soul, not from the animal soul. We want the source of the being to come from the divine soul. So we had to first submit the animal soul into its proper place. And now we can begin to identify with the divine soul and begin to understand how to act out of the divine soul.
What do you mean Emunah is nothingness?
Emunah, we'll see. We'll talk a lot about it. Okay? So, yes.
So would you say if one were to start from here, it's necessary for them to have the background of...
So it was very interesting. Navi told me that there were new people coming. She said that there's some people who should hear the second year before the first year. Because the first year, it's like bashgacha, that if you hear the first year and you're not ready for it, so maybe you come out so broken. Because a lot of people come out of the first year and they say, so what's left? I'm like, I really am nothing. Not nothing in the sense, I'm really something terrible. That's the feeling. The feeling is that I'm so ego that I can't escape it. So what's the remedy? So maybe there's certain people who need to hear the second year first. Could be. Could be. So you're learning, hopefully. And like we said at the beginning of the class, that you can take the first year online. So if you don't want to wait until next year, that we'll offer it again, God willing.
And you're interacting with the teacher at the same time on this middle course?
No, it's recorded lectures. No, they're very good. Anyway, so Vashgacha, I don't know, I never taught this from the beginning of the year. Last time we taught it, it was just one semester and started at the end of the year. By Vashgacha, we're now in Parashat Lech Lecha, and everything that we're going to be talking about is the difference between Noach and Avram. Okay, the first thing that we're going to learn is about the difference between Noach and Avram. And this begins, out of the article, it starts in chapter 8. Now there's actually a reason for starting from chapter 8. Sorry. The reason for starting from chapter 8 of the article is because I really feel that that you have to get a sense, first of all, where we're going. So this will be where we're going. Okay, this will show like where we're headed. And then we'll start going back to begin to fill in the how you get there.
Moshe, we need one.
I don't have any more. And I can't give you mine because I need to read. So let's start. The Torah describes Noach in the following manner. Noach was a righteous, earnest man in his time. Ish tzaddik tamim haya b'dorotav. Noach walked with God. The manner of walking described in this verse is with, meaning that Noach followed God step for step. The Almighty seemingly made a step and Noach followed him. Okay? So let's start looking at this whole concept. What does it mean to walk step by step with Hashem? And what does Noach represent in his ability to do this? So first of all, we know that Noach only took his relationship with Hashem so far. What do we mean by so far? That even though God made 2 covenants with him, the first covenant was before he entered the ark. He told him, "Vani hinei briti itchem, uvata ata v'ishtecha uvanecha u'nshei banecha itach el hateva." He gave him a covenant, and there's 10 different opinions in the commentaries about what this covenant was about. But basically, everybody agrees that the covenant was that they would survive the year in the ark, which was an unnatural thing that should occur. It was literally impossible for that to work. So Hashem made a covenant, and covenant means a bond that is above reason. A bond above reason means that we're connected even if things don't work out. Say it another way is, even if you do all the sins in the world, we're still connected. I'm not going to go back on what I promised you I would do. after that, he made with him the universal covenant about with the rainbow, that he would not destroy the world again. So Hashem had a clear relationship with Noach. Noach is a prophet. Hashem talks to him. But we know that Noach wasn't able to give the beginning of the Jewish people. Hashem didn't select him to create something special. Maybe you could say Hashem thought that everything would be fine from now on. But we know that the end of Noah's life is not so fine. It's not so great. After he goes out of the ark, so he obviously doesn't get along with his one of his children. And after that, there's the whole story of the Tower of Babylon and the attempt of mankind to rid itself of God's presence, or to at least go above that. And Noach isn't able to do anything, even though he's still alive. So he's not where the real change in humanity starts from. Why is that? So how would we understand Noach if we would look at him, and hopefully we do, from 21st century eyes? What kind of a person is he? What does he symbolize? So I would say that you would say, I hope that people see this, that he's the symbol of living harmoniously with nature. There's nobody like Noach. He's able to save wildlife, right? So he's one of these Audubon Society types. But not only that, he's also able to save mankind by helping mankind work properly with nature. That was his first invention. Remember, he had an invention before the ark. Before he built the ark, he did something tremendous. He invented the plow. What was happening until then? There was no real interaction with nature. Meaning, what does it mean to interact with nature? It means to see how nature functions and to look at where can I utilize the way that it functions without, there's other ways, getting involved in nature and destroying it, but that's not what he did. He used what he saw in order to better the human condition by working properly with nature. How did people grow things before Noach? So there was no plow. How did they grow anything? What do you mean? Yeah, so what did they do? They dug and? Okay, so why doesn't that work? Because it's just hard work. It says, "V'kotz v'dardar tatzmiach lach." It says that the earth would grow more wild thorns and whatever else, grasses, and not what you planted. So what does it? Why couldn't you? Even if you do it with your hands, you should be able to grow stuff. Why can't you? Why couldn't they?
The earth would overrun it.
What?
The earth would overrun it.
Why would it? Why would it do that? The moment you put a seed inside, it should grow. Why would it give you something different from what you expected? So, I haven't seen this written, even though I think it's almost written in certain places. But it seems to me that what they did before was they didn't grasp the concept of planting. That was the problem. Not that he made a plow. The moment that you understand how planting works, you can make a plow. What I think they did is that either they were gatherers, meaning they didn't try to work with nature, they just, whatever there was, that's it. Or at most, even if they had some concept of, I'd like there to be more berries in this area, or whatever it is, they didn't get the idea of that you have to let something rot before it can grow. They couldn't imagine that the reason that something grows is because it first rots. It doesn't make sense when you think about it. So they, what?
Meaning all the potential there, but if you don't interact with it.
Exactly. There was no interaction. That's what I'm trying to get at. That Noach understands nature in the way of understanding its laws, that I can interact with it. Meaning that what you need to really do is put the seed into the ground deep enough that it rots. Because if it does, if you don't put it deep enough, it won't rot. It'll be too dry, and you have to water it. You water it not to get it to grow. You water it to get it to rot. That's the strange thing about this whole. It's counterintuitive in the beginning, but once you get it, so you see that, wait a minute, this is how nature works. And when you think about it, that's how the modern world even thinks about nature. Meaning, why is there, what do they call it? The whole carbon cycle. The carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is that things die, and you put them in the ground, and they rot, and they fertilize. The whole idea that things break down in order to be built again, and to break down and to be built, that whole cyclical way of thinking. And we're going to come back to this a lot, that he understood cycles. And also you could say that that's exactly why the covenant that Hashem made with him is a covenant of, what was in the end? Kaitz, v'choref, that the seasons would not stop, that the cycles would continue forever. It's like that's the level that Noach can bring humanity to understand cyclical events, to understand processes that are cyclical. That's what nature means. Nature means, how do you say nature in Hebrew?
Teva.
What does that mean? What does that word mean? To what? What does the word mean? It comes from Tvi'ut Ein. The word nature is very young. It's only about 1,000 years old. It came from the translators of the Rambam, the Tibunim. They invented this word teva, but to say nature, because there's a word in Arabic, there's a word in Latin, but there was no word in Hebrew. So they invented this word. Where did they take the word from? They took it from the Mishnah that says that a Talmid Chacham has Tvi'ut Ein, it's called. He recognizes things, and you can count on his recognition. Why? Because it's as if it's been swallowed in his eye, it's been drowned in his eye. Litboa means to drown. And something is imprinted. It's been imprinted in his eye. That's what teva means, literally. It means teva is so what is nature? What does nature got to do with imprinting? Because that's exactly what it is. It's an imprinting that the cycle always repeats the same way. It's imprinted. It can't change. But if you understand the cycle, if you understand the process, you understand its laws, you can work with it, or you can even work against it. Okay, but that's what Noach got, that nobody else understood before him. He's the ultimate naturalist, or if you want, the ultimate scientist, because he understood patterns, he understood repetition. And that's what it takes to be a scientist. You have to see patterns in the data. You have to recognize things for what they are. How strong is nature? Well, when Avram comes along, the one thing Avram knows is that he can't have children. Because who told him that he can't have children? What's the most cyclical thing before you begin to understand the cycles of the earth? It's the cycles of the planets. So that's why the original science was based on planets, because they're cyclical. Because they repeat all the time. That's the naturalist way of thinking about things. So, according to Avram's understanding of astrology or astronomy, whatever, it doesn't matter, it's all the same thing for them. Avram eno molid. This man Avram was born in a certain time, in a certain place, that it would be impossible for him to have offspring. Cyclically, nature delegates how things will work. And so there's no way to escape that. To walk step by step with Hashem is to grasp Hashem and nature as the same thing. Meaning, how do you work with nature? It makes a step, you make a step. You follow it. Eta Elokim Yitalech Noach means to grasp Hashem, and it's true, because that's why we have this gematria that came even later, which is that Elokim equals the Teva. That the name Elokim, Eta Elokim Yitalech Noach, who did he follow? He followed nature. For him, Hashem was nature. What we would call today, it would be strange to call a naturalist that, because they're supposed to be scientists, but it's what we would call somebody who's a polytheist. A polytheist is somebody who sees that everything is God. All the all the pieces, a pluralist or a pantheist, is even how it's called. These are, it's a feeling, it's not false. God is at least that. The Chiddush of Avram is that God is also personal. He's not just nature and all its laws and all these things. He's also these things. But beyond that, there's a higher level called Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is already a personal God. And there's divine providence on every single aspect, and not just providence, but the yearning to create a relationship. Hashem doesn't just want it to be, I know about you. He wants you to know about Him. He wants it to be bi-directional. Yeah.
Can you go back and repeat that word teva? I guess I could hear
Ha-teva.
the video.
It's
Teva
okay.
comes from-
Ha-teva. Teva means to be imprinted.
Okay.
And that's how nature is. It's imprinted with certain laws that cause the events in nature to repeat cyclically.
And it comes from what word?
Tvi'ut Ein.
To view.
It's a Mishnah in Baba Metzia.
But doing a physics course for a non-Jew is a way of knowing God.
Yes, certainly.
So God likes universities.
What?
God likes universities.
As long as they don't say He doesn't exist. The strange thing is, at least if you would, like Rav Ginsburg once said, he had a series of lectures on evolution. He said if you take any biology textbook and you replace the word nature with God, so fine. This is really what it means. The only problem is that that's the highest level that Noach could attain. And why is this the highest level you could attain? Because you see Hashem in the way that you treat Him. And he treated Hashem, Et Elokim Yitalech Noach, that the most that I can do is follow what He does. I have to pick up on his lead, and I can follow Him.
But he merited a response that was much.
Sorry?
He merited a response that was greater than the way he was acting.
How do you see that?
He was at a very high level.
How do you see that?
What do you mean?
It was at his
The whole
highest
novel
level.
and the Teva and him being saved doesn't make sense. It's not natural.
So now you asked the question, so answer.
It doesn't seem
Hashem is obviously more. Hashem is obviously
God
more.
is not responding in the measure that you want.
Nachon. Hashem gave him more than what he could see. Which is also why, as we'll see in a moment, he's called of small faith. His ability to believe in Hashem was very limited. We'll see this in a moment, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. The reason that the sages say this is because the rain started pouring down, and it didn't just pour. Like Rashi says, there was the amount of 40 days and 40 nights of rain started coming down in one day. It's some ridiculous amount. And he still wouldn't go into the ark until the waters forced him in. And this was 7 days after Hashem commanded him, go into the ark. Hashem told him 7 days before, go into the ark. Waited for 7 days, he doesn't go. So the rain came down. Chazal say, they make him a little bit better. They say that it was the 7 days of the Shiva of Metushelach, of his grandfather. That's like to save him a little. But the pshat in the Torah is that Hashem told him 7 days later the rain starts pouring and then he goes in.
Because he was working with nature.
Okay.
By natural means,
No, because the whole thing of the ark for him was supernatural. Even he couldn't really. Well, how's it? Because naturally, there's no way he could have survived what was coming. So even if he knew at some level what was coming, because Hashem had told him, he didn't know how to fix the situation. He didn't believe that it was possible. So Hashem had to make a covenant with him. What?
He still built it.
How can someone have the conviction to build what he built and then not actually use it? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly how Hashem tells me to put tefillin on, and He tells me this will help you. This. I do it. Do I really believe it? That's exactly the problem that we have. That Noach is not some figure in the past. Noach is who I am. Hagoy asher b'kirbecha. I'm also a goy, and my goy, the most I can understand, is that okay. If it makes sense somehow, let's go with it. But if it doesn't make sense, so why should I trust these things? To trust Hashem, as we'll see, starts when there's no natural way to get through the problem. That's when trust of Hashem really begins. Confidence in Hashem. So we're building up now. So, but he's of small faith, of little faith, because he can't go beyond what nature tells him.
But did he reach his highest?
Yes, he's the highest level that a non-Jew can attain. That's why they're called Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, even though they're not connected to B'nai Noach. They were not given to Noach. Who were they given to? They were given to Adam. But Adam didn't even reach that state. He had a state that was given to him when he was born, when he was created, and he lost it, and that was it. There was no subsequent ascent. But Noach attained that apparently through work. That's why Hashem only appears to him when he's how many years old? 480, because it was 120 years before the Mabul, and it was 600 at the Mabul.
So after the Mabul, Noach did not have any more spiritual growth.
He wasn't able to carry it further. We had to wait another 10 generations for Avram to come along. Then when Avram comes along, then suddenly the next stage of spiritual progression happens. Okay, so let's read a little bit more. So this is a beginning of an explanation of what it means that Noach walked with Hashem. Let's just mention, before we do this, that he's not the first person who walked with Hashem. Who was the first person to walk with Hashem? No, almost. So let's look at the at page 4 in pasuk 21. I'll read it in Hebrew because I have a problem reading the English. So you'll read the English in verse 20. I'll read it. Vayichi Chanoch 560 shana vayoled et Metushalach. Vayitalech Chanoch et האלוקים. אחרי הולידו את מתושלח 300 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות. Page 4. On top, oh, sorry, it's page 5. I saw the chapter on top says 4. Okay? Okay, so verse 21. Verse 22, ויתהלך חנוך את האלוקים. Chanoch walked with God after he gave birth to Metushelach. 300 שנה ויולד בנים ובנות. And then it says again, ויהי כל ימי חנוך 560 שנה ו300 שנה, ויתהלך חנוך את האלוקים ואיננו, כי לקח אותו אלוקים. And notice this is all with Elokim. There's no other name here. And Chanoch, it says about him twice that he walked with God. Unklus, when he translated the Torah, one of his principles was that whenever the Torah talked about something that could be understood as a personification, or even more than that, an embodiment of Hashem, that he would make it more spiritual. He wouldn't, like, you can hear in Vayitalech Chanoch et Elokim that Chanoch walked with God. What does that mean? Does he have God here with him and he's walking with him? He could understand that. And because he was writing it, apparently in his time there were many, many B'nai Noach. There were many, many people who were close to Yiddishkeit but weren't Jews. And that's why he wrote the translation, because Aramaic was the international language then, in the time of Unklus. He himself was a convert. So he made these words, he translated them not literally. How does he translate? In all three cases, Vayitalech Chanoch et Elokim, the two times it says that Chanoch walked with Elokim, and Vayitalech Noach et Elokim, he writes, how does he write? How does he write it? Bedechilu me'avaya. With fear of God. He doesn't write he walked with God, he says he walked with fear of God. Okay? Before we get to how he translates something with regard to Avram, because we haven't seen the pasuk yet, what does it mean to walk with fear of God? That's what we called faith. When you say somebody is a God-fearing person, basically it's almost a synonym for saying that he has faith. What is faith? Faith, what is fear of God? Fear of God, imagine like a naturalist says to fear God is to be careful with nature. It's knowing that nature is very, very powerful. Like today, don't cause global warming or something. If you do something too wrong, it'll come back at you. So to have fear A person who sees Hashem only as the embodiment of nature sees Hashem only in the light of fear, of awe. Okay, you can have awe of nature, you can have fear of nature. How do we see this in terms of Hanoch? That he lived for how many years? 365. What is 365 in Yiddishkeit afterwards? It's a number of negative commandments, of prohibitive commandments. Shasa mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Lo ta'aseh, don't do, is fear. It's what you don't do. Why? Because if you step on it, it'll blow up. You don't do these things. In early Jewish thought, that's what the Rambam calls that we don't know. Okay? Is that we can't know anything about Hashem. It's knowing out of negative knowledge. That He's wise, but not the wisdom that we mean. And He lives, but not what we call life. And He exists, but not what we call exist. All these things, He has all these qualities, but they're nothing like how we have them. Right? In the summer course, we ended with one of these most important things that you can learn from this, is that Hashem has mercy, and it's nothing like our mercy. How is it nothing like our mercy? Because it's infinite. That you can sin 1,000,000 times, and you can always ask forgiveness, and He always has mercy. And with a person who's finite, so he might have mercy 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, but afterwards he can't be merciful anymore. He's used it all up. So Hashem is merciful, but nothing like our mercy, because our mercy can't go that length. It can't extend so much. So Unklu says he walked with fear of God. Fear of God, and that's why in general we say that the highest relationship that a non-Jew can have with God is one of fear. It can't yet be the relationship that Avram developed. And if he has any of the other relationship, it comes from a Jew somehow. It has to come from somebody who walks not with God, who has a different type of relationship with Hashem. So anyway, what we got out of this is that they had faith, but they didn't have confidence. These early generations of tzaddikim had faith, and they knew what not to do, and that's why ve'enenu, that's why Hanoch disappears. He reaches the ultimate state. Where does the word Ein come from? Enenu. He's gone. He becomes nothingness. He's so full of fear of God that he's nothingness. It's like if a person comes to an awareness of his ego, and that's all he has, in the end, if he really is sincere, he'll come to a state of nothingness. Because he won't be, like we said, that's sort of like the feeling that you get at the end of the first year of Torah Nefesh. It's sort of like, I can't do anything. I'm all lo ta'aseh. And where's the aseh here? The aseh has to wait for Avram. It has to wait for a different type of relationship to form.
Or a relationship. Wouldn't the first part be minus a relationship?
Why?
It seems very one way. In fear of seems very one way. It's not a relationship.
So, people have relationships that they fear.
It's a kind of
But it's only one.
It's not one. It's not one directional because
no?
it's not one. They interact.
Huh?
You can still give and do things out of fear.
I understand.
Only because you said they only had faith.
Okay.
It's really blocking it.
So I understand what you say. Let's say instead of with a relationship, the description again that the sages give, et Elokim, step by step, like he walks after Hashem. So you see that there's like Hashem does something, he does it, he mimics him, and you almost could say that's like a monkey mimicking a human. It's not yet what you really would call a relationship. There's still, it's a relationship from the person. You can say Hashem doesn't really relate to that. You can say Hashem it's not panim bepanim, it's not face to face. There's something missing. It's almost like the way the Rambam describes a good marriage. Okay? That the woman does what the husband says. So that's his relationship. Whatever Hashem says, I do. That's because out of fear.
I could say like the way a horse relates to its rider.
Okay, something like that. Yeah. Right. And even a good horse, the better he gets, the more he relates to the point where he can pick up on really, really small things. It's like a good scientist. Yeah. Okay.
Sing and dance and they are happy in their relationship with him and they love him all over pretending.
There was a story, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
How much time do we have? I don't have a clock. We're done? No, we have to read a little bit more from Avram, so we'll wait with the question.
We're in the English?
Yeah, we're in the English. Line 7. At the beginning of the parsha of circumcision, God commands Avraham. When Avram was 99 years old, God revealed himself to Avram and said to him, I am Kel Shakai, walk before me and be earnest. Avraham ben 90 shana v'teisha shanim, v'yera Hashem el Avraham. Okay, now you can't throw these out, because I neglected to change the Havaya here to Havaya.
What happened?
I put God's name here, so don't throw these out. Either give them back to me or keep them somewhere safe. The manner of walking expected from Avraham is to walk before God, to take the initiative, and God will seemingly follow. Hitalech lefanai means walk before me. It's completely, everybody knows this, that this is the difference. That suddenly Hashem has somebody who he is willing to follow. Hashem follows a human being? Yes. That's exactly what it says. Can. You'll be the one who blesses. I give you the right to set the direction. You tell me where we're going. I don't know where we're going. This week, this Shabbos, I was thinking that we think we have many choices. A lot of times we don't have any choices, but sometimes we come to a point in life and there's a lot of different options. And you know how difficult it is to decide. So now think about Hashem, who has infinite number of choices at every moment. How difficult it must be to be Hashem to decide all the time. So he said that's why he created the world. And he put tzaddikim in the world. Why? So the tzaddikim will tell him what to choose. It's not a joke. That's exactly what it says about the creation of the world. Hashem couldn't decide whether to create the world or not to create it. So it says he went to seek advice. Who did he seek the advice from? B'minimlach, b'nishmotehem shel tzaddikim. He asked the souls of the tzaddikim. They said, build the world. What are we trying to say? That Hashem doesn't know what he wants? It's not that he doesn't know what he wants. He knows what he wants. But he could get there in a million different ways. He's telling you, you tell me how we're going to get there. You decide. At the highest level, we even say that that options are so immense that he doesn't also know where we're going. There's a pasuk like that in Zcharia that's always explained in Chassidus, that Hashem will be surprised at the end where we ended up. Mm-hmm. That the world is built in such a way that it's almost he doesn't know what the end is. What do you mean he doesn't know? He said it, he knows everything. But there's something in the way that he built the world that the end will be so surprising that even he'll be surprised.
He doesn't want a deterministic world. He wants an aspect where it's not determined.
And who will determine? You will determine. You decide where you want the world to go. Now, what?
Tzaddikim or Jews?
Tzaddikim, it says. It doesn't say that. Obviously, it's a tzaddik has to be. There were tzaddikim like Chanoch and Noach, but they didn't ascend to that level. They didn't go to that level that allowed them to have that type of relationship with Hashem, of me telling you where we're going. A tzaddik means my divine soul. When it comes to the divine soul is all about being. Being, first of all, in the sense of create a world. And first of all, tells Hashem, create a world, we want a world. And now I'll tell you what to put in the world. And this is what I begin to think about, what needs to be in this world. That's how the divine soul wants, if you want, it's like this is the part of Hashem, the divine soul is the part of Hashem that wants being. And is therefore committed to being. It's committed to the world, it's committed to creating things. It's the power of creation in Hashem. It's the power of that we call Yesh, that there is a Yesh.
That part of the divine soul that is going to be active like that is so fused with God that it's really just doing
It's an
what God
extension.
wants.
It's an extension.
So what's the whole
Because in this world it's
God is
separate.
saying this is what he wants. In the mouth of a tzaddik who's so humble.
Nachon?
And therefore it happens.
בסדר.
It would be amazing if we could do that.
But that's what we're saying.
But can we?
That every Jew has a divine mission, which means really not that I'm so. I don't know if you remember the first, and last year when we had the full semester, the full course. So I'm sure this came up once or twice. People asked, "How do I know what my divine mission is?"
Yeah.
How do I know? Says, what are you talking about? Hashem doesn't know. He's waiting for you to decide what it is. That's what he tells him. Hitalech lefanai veyatamim. And by walking before me, that's what will make you earnest. So Hashem, in that sense, doesn't know. He's not like, people say, why don't I come with an instruction booklet? Because there isn't one. You have to write it.
But I was
So the
that there's a predetermination versus free will, that there's both happening at the same time.
Predetermination is the way that the animal soul sees the world. It's the way that Noach saw the world, that everything is determined. It's cyclical. You can't break the cycles. The way that the divine soul sees the world is the same place as Hashem creating the world. Because everything is open. There's all the options in the world.
But Noah's mission was also divine.
Nachon.
So, and Hashem
But he
worked
couldn't
with
get there
the
by
people he was
himself.
living at.
But he couldn't get there by himself. He had to tell him what to do.
Right, so I can have a divine mission, but God works with your
Nachon.
nefesh
Nachon.
v'hamid is
Nachon.
functioning out.
Nachon.
And so he does know my mission.
Nachon. And we talked so much about that, about signs and following signs. That's exactly the mindset of Noach. Of seeing a sign of like we talked about last year, of the bird, where the nest is, telling you this is where you should do the mitzvah. That's exactly step by step. Hashem shows me where, and I go and do it.
So I can.
But that's all the mindset of the animal soul, we said. That's all working out of my animal soul. It's serving Hashem with my animal soul. But serving Hashem with my divine soul, there's no world. We have to create it. There's no nest, there's no birds, there's nothing. Whatever I decide there will be is what. Now, granted that for most people, this doesn't mean that I can create a universe. Even though in the future it says, every tzaddik will create 310 worlds. But now in this world it means, even for every single Jew, there's a certain part of the world that you're responsible for in the sense that it can't be created without you. It simply won't exist. It's not like, everything will fall into place, everything will be okay. No, it's telling you, if you don't create this is your mission. Whatever this thing is, it could be just a family. Even that's a lot. It could be just somebody who's stuck in some hospital, God forbid, from the beginning of his life to the end of his life. It's something there. And it won't exist without you doing it. It could be as big as what the Rabbi did. It could be as big as what the Mashiach will do. Every person has different, but it won't exist. It's not in existence now. It's waiting to become. And the only one who can bring it into being is you. And guess what? Hashem tells you, whatever you decide, I'm going with it.
But that's only if I'm capable of functioning from that pure divine
Nachon.
place.
It has. Nachon.
And so I can live a whole life and never get to that place.
Nachon. Nachon. Until you hear this class. Hopefully, once you hear this course, you'll decide that it's possible.
What you're implying is
What we're saying is,
to me that's it's not.
let me translate it into psychological terms. Then most people are miyuash. They're in despair. Because they've despaired of ever doing anything important. Why? Because their idea and notion of important is what others have done. They have this concept of, and when they say, how can I you're right, you'll never do that. Whatever that thing is, it's a waste of time. It's not you. It's not for you. But they never come to that place where, and what is that? What does it mean to look at what somebody else has done and try to do the same thing? That's ego. Because it's saying, he has that, I want that too.
It's a story of
You could be doing something new and be full of ego.
Nachon, also. You could be such a great egomaniac. But the truth is that already Shlomo Melech said, it's only seemingly that way. Ki ein chadash tachat hashemesh. The way to explain the Chassidus is, with the animal soul there's nothing new. We've seen it all, been there, done that. We've seen everything that's ever been done will be done again and again and again. Nobody does anything new with the animal soul. There's nothing new. It's just different ways of doing the same thing. That's called the Yesh Miyesh. But when it comes to Aval Yesh, even Chazal already say this, Aval Yesh Chadash Me'al Shemesh. The Shemesh is the beginning of nature. Without the sun, there would be no nature here. But above the sun, there is new. And that's exactly what Hashem says to Avraham. We'll get to this next class, obviously. Go above the stars. Vayotzeoto. What does it mean? He took him, Rashi says, he took him above the stars. And he showed him, you're right. When it comes to nature, when it comes to the animal soul, Avram cannot give birth. Can have no offspring. But I'm telling you that above, and that's where I want you to go, Avram can certainly have offspring. It entails a change of name which means a change of essence, that I'm not working with, again, a change of identity. I have to identify with something else. But I have that thing. It's just waiting for me to finally identify with. So what we're going to begin to do in the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time on this whole story of Noach and Avram, because it's very central, is we're going to begin to understand, how did Avram get there? What did he do that was different than everybody before him? Because he did things even before Hashem told him, long before. This is where, it says here, down here, Genesis 17:1, Perek Yud Zayin. That's when Hashem tells him to walk before me and be earnest. But we've known Avram for 5 whole chapters, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We've known him for 5 chapters. He's been doing stuff. So the question is, what has he been doing?
Searching.
We'll see. He's done a lot of walking, that's for sure. Right? V'Avram haloch v'naso anigba. V'elech Avram haloch v'naso anigba. He walks a lot. And we'll talk about what this walking really is. But what we're trying to get is that Avram did something in his development to merit Hashem telling him, you're who I was looking for, you can identify with your divine soul, and I want you to tell me where to go. Settle. So the last two.
Copies. Do you have an extra copy of this chapter?
Yes.